Chapter 15. Our Need is Neology. The work of evangelism continued, with Lester spending many lonely days and nights away from us and the church. There were times when he fulfilled as many as 50 engagements in 3 states in a short period of time. Always the big 32-foot gospel van would come back loaded with gifts for the city of refuge. Help for the city continued to pour in, not only in cash gifts, but sometimes in unexpected ways. The Alameda Baptist Church family was loyal and loving. In every way, they were tremendously supportive, and revival fires continued to burn brightly. We're trying to hold the torch high for freedom and liberty in the building of a New Testament church that's geared for evangelism, my husband explained. The work of the Park Avenue Christian Day School, the 2 rescue missions, the City of Refuge, the Family Altar radio broadcast, the publication of the Faith Enterprise, the needs of the church family. All of this was more than enough work and responsibility for one man. No wonder he wrote in 1960 that his heart was burdened and troubled. The very desperation of this hour, the destitution of our world, the black clouds of destiny and the impending judgment and doom that hang over this Christ-rejecting, God-defying, and Bible-denying world is enough to drive us to our knees. We've emphasized psychology, sociology, theology, but our need is neology. Therefore, we've called all our workers in our ministry to their knees for the Word of God and prayer every day at noon. And we are setting the last Thursday in every month as a day of fasting and praying. The devil and some friends have tried to convince us we've tried to do too much with too little. But I must affirm one more time that faith always must run ahead of sight. When nothing whereon to lean remains, when strongholds crumble to dust, when nothing is sure but that God still reigns, that's the time to trust. 'Tis better to walk by faith than sight, in this path of yours and mine. In the pitch-black night with no outer light, that's the time for faith to shine. With the Bible in our hands, we have only the promises of God's provisions, but we believe that is sufficient. Hospitals, reform schools, and penitentiaries are not the answer. At the City of Refuge, we present a faithful Christ for failing men. Jesus stood on the shore near the fisherman's failure and said, "Launch out into the deep and let down your nets for a draught." To which they said, "We have toiled all the night and have taken nothing. Nevertheless, at thy word," and my friends, the word brought faith and fish. A precious friend who used to be an enemy of the cross and of our ministry stood in our church to give a marvelous testimony, and began it by saying, "The Lord saved my soul and gave me a fishing pole." By the great grace and mercy of God, testimonies like that became more and more frequent as word filtered back to us about men, women, and children who had surrendered their lives to the Lord. Neology and its role in the Roloff ministries could never be denied. When Lester began the first City of Refuge, he asked God to give him just one man that was completely delivered and transformed. God has answered that prayer many times over. But the first one was Victor Edge, who later became a preacher of the gospel. Many men left the city and enrolled in Bible schools. Later they went on to Tennessee Temple College, graduated, and entered full-time evangelistic, missionary, or pastoral work. We long ago lost count of the numbers of men and women in ministries such as this. More buildings were needed at the City of Refuge, and radio listeners were alerted. A Houston friend of the radio ministry invited my husband to call. She invited him into her little old-fashioned house and asked him to tell her more about the city. After she was thoroughly convinced that he was the radio preacher, she took an old walking stick, reached under a table, pulled out a paper sack, and said, "Hold out your hand." She then put a $1,000 bill into Lester's hand. She proceeded to give him another $1,000 bill, another, and another, and then 2 $500 bills, and 2 $100 bills. She said, "I may need to move to the city sometime, and I will need something firm to stand on." Earlier, God had told my husband that the foundation to the next building would be taken care of, and he recognized as the woman spoke that God was confirming that promise.